Alright, what's up guys? My name is Zach, and this week I've been driving the 2023 Hyundai Ioniq 5. Below me are two electric motors paired to a single-speed transmission. Now, I am super excited to be making this video today because the Ioniq 5 is one of my most, if not my most anticipated vehicle to drive this year. I've been trying to get my grubby little hands on this car for so long. I had so many shoots lined up to film this, and they kept falling through. So, you're finally seeing the Ioniq 5 on the Shooting Cars YouTube channel, and I have plenty of thoughts about my experience. But if you would like your car featured in a video just like this, you can submit it to my website, zackpradel.com. Takes less than a minute to fill out the submission form, and you would get a video of your car just like the one you're watching of this Ioniq 5. But let's get back to that all-electric drivetrain. Well, this is the all-wheel drive model, so it gets those dual motors. This dual motor makes 320 horsepower and 446 foot-pounds of torque, which is monstrous and beautiful. This car is fast. When you put it into sport mode, it throws you back into your seat, and I love that. I have been thoroughly enjoying that about this experience. It is also capable of 350 kilowatt charging. However, as of right now, none of my local chargers will do that. However, it is nice to know that at least it has that capability. Range is estimated by Hyundai at about 300 miles. That's their goal. However, what I've found personally seems to be about 270 is the biggest number I've seen after a full charge. Granted, it has been somewhat cooler here in Chicago while I've had this car, so weather plays a huge effect. What also plays a big effect? The climate controls. Yesterday, the car was rather chilly. It was about 30 degrees outside, and I had the climate controls on. Well, I turned them off, and I regained about 50 miles of range. 50 extra miles for just having the climate controls off because the car was so cold. I think 270 is a fine number. It's not record-breaking, but most people don't drive more than that in a day like I did that day, so I think it's all right. Like I mentioned with charging, here are my receipts from my recent charges in case you want to know how much I spent and some real world numbers. And as you'll notice, I recently became a $4 a month member of Electrify America, so that price does reflect that. In terms of efficiency, I've put over 321 miles on this, and I've averaged 3.1 miles per kilowatt hour, which is almost identical to what the Hyundai Kona EV did last week. How does it feel to actually drive the Ioniq 5? Well, it's been a great experience. Like I said, the power is unbelievable from a vehicle like this. And I was ready to say in this video that you really honestly don't need much more power. And I really do believe that. However, the morning that I am making this video, not even 10 minutes ago, I read a new article that Hyundai is putting out the Ioniq 5N, which is their performance version. So I guess there is more power to be had. But visibility is pretty good. We'll talk about some safety features that this vehicle does have. And actually the handling dynamics, it's not sluggish. It is fun. It works. And on some twisty roads, I was giggling to myself, which doesn't often happen with electric cars. So with that stuff out of the way, let's talk about the interior. Well, in front of me, I have a completely digital display. This can be configured in a multitude of different ways, and it does change with the drive modes. And it has one of my favorite Hyundai features is when I turn on the turn signal, it actually gives me a little blind spot camera in the gauge cluster to help with safety. However, one of my big gripes with this instrument cluster is the fact that the steering wheel, when I put it in the comfortable position for me, cuts off parts of the gauge cluster. I can't really see it sometimes. And so, yeah, I can move the steering wheel ridiculously close to eliminate that, but then it's really uncomfortable to drive. So I wish that the display was actually a little bit smaller or just arranged slightly differently. Up above the gauge cluster, I do have a head-up display giving me some information like my speed and lane keep assist. And when I do have the navigation set, it will give me arrows left or right if I have to make a turn. On the steering wheel, on the left, I have my volume, skip track mode, favorite, and phone options, as well as I have my drive mode select. I absolutely love this. I just have in the back of my head, I always drive in eco mode. I double tap it into sport mode, and the car wakes up, which I love. And then off to the right, I have my pages, selectors, and cruise control options. This does have adaptive cruise as well as steering assist, which has been incredible for long journeys. I did about 140 miles yesterday, and most of that was with this setting on, and it made it a very pleasurable experience. Around the backside of the steering wheel, we do have paddles. These are for the regenerative braking. So if you put it up all the way, you can one pedal drive. It's called iPedal here in the Ioniq 5. But I like that adjustability, and they do have these really nice bumps on the back for the grip. The overall look and feel of the steering wheel is nice. I think it's modern, and I like that there's no spoke down at the bottom. So for that steering assist, you have to hold the steering wheel. It's very, very nice to rest my hand down at the center at the bottom while the car steers for me. On the steering column is the shifter, which I really do not like. You twist it forward and back to get it into drive and reverse. I think it's weird, I think it's clunky, and I think it's awkward. Off to the left, I have gauge dimmer switches, my auto holding brake, traction control off, tailgate, and my power parking brake. Moving out of the door, I have my power mirrors, power locks, and power windows, as well as I do get a nice strip of mood lighting that we'll talk about with the center infotainment. Speaking of which, let's pull over and talk about the infotainment system. All right, so let's talk Ioniq 5 infotainment because there's a lot to talk about. First of all, this is the blank default screen, but we can come over here and have all of our apps. So a couple of things to break down. First of all, we do have EV. We can go here and set all of our EV charging, transfers, all the cool nerdy info can be found right here, which I really, really like. And then we have our navigation. One really, really cool thing is that if you set in the navigation to navigate to a charge point, the Ioniq 5 will start preconditioning the battery before you arrive. So there's this little logo that comes up, looks like a glow plug logo essentially, and it's warming up the batteries to charge faster. The Hyundai Kona EV that I drove did not have this, but you have to set in the infotainment, you have to set the navigation to the charger so it knows that you're gonna do that. I think that's really cool. Phone, of course, Apple CarPlay. This is what it looks like. Nothing really too crazy there. Voice memo, climate. Now this is where I do start to have issues with the infotainment system. First of all, this is way too cluttered. There's too many buttons. There's sort of the dash and stuff like that. It's a really weird image, and I think it's really, really hard to just glance at while driving. In here, we do have like driver only mode, which is nice. We have sync for dual zone climate and all of those things. And of course, we do have tons of settings down here as well. But I don't like how crowded this is. Going back, we do have a separate button for the heated seats, which is kind of annoying. So follow me here. I was navigating with Apple CarPlay, right? So I was driving like this. My phone doesn't have any connection. I was driving like this, and I wanted to turn on my heated seat. So this is what I had to do. Push the climate button, then come down here and tap that, and then tap up 3 times. Or, again, starting with Apple CarPlay. Ready? It shouldn't be that much work. It just shouldn't be. So that is a big gripe that I have. I do have valet mode, quiet mode. This is what Hyundai and Kias do. This will lower the overall volume allowed in the car and focus the speakers on just the driver. So if you have someone sleeping in your back seat, it will not disturb them. HD radio, setup, radio, media, blue link, notifications, and user manual. The only other thing I want to show you is media. We do have sounds of nature, of which Hyundai has added new sounds of nature. So, lively forest has always been there, although it looks like they updated the photo. But on a sailing ship? City at Dawn. They've added music over it, which is interesting. This is so cool. I feel like this is the background of what would play at a planetarium. Rainy day, typical rainy day. Still just sounds like rainy day, no added music. And then warm fireplace. Again, this is just SFX. But this, I mean, driving around at night. That is really, really cool. We do have a backup camera, so we'll put it into reverse here. We have a couple different views. We have a top-down view. Let me get away from the wall so it stops freaking out. We do have a top-down view, and we can do a 360 view as well. You can kind of scroll around here, which is kind of interesting. You can go up, but you can't go any lower than that. Very, very weird. And then we do have some settings here as well. So definitely very cool camera stuff. We'll put it back into park. One thing I always forget about is that you can come into here, vehicle. It's buried in so many different menus, but come down here to lights, ambient light, jeez, color. All right, so now you can finally edit all of the different colors that you're seeing on the door. We have polar white, moon white, ice blue, ocean blue, jade green, orchid green, freesia yellow, sunrise red, aurora purple, lightning violet, or custom color. And then it gives you a color wheel that you can choose the color of the ambient lighting in the car. This is really, really cool and an often overlooked feature in cars, so I'm really happy to see it here in the Ioniq 5. And one more thing to note is that at night, this all turns black. So there is a dark mode as well, so it's not blaringly white in the middle of the night. Down below the infotainment system, we do have 2 climate control vents and the hazard switch. Off to the far right, I do have a camera button with a P. This is the parking cameras, which I already showed in the gauge cluster, but you can look at a couple different camera views, which I think is really, really nice in the Ioniq 5. And then I have some climate controls here. I can adjust my temperature, fan speed, defrosters, and recirculating. All of those necessities I do have down here. However, I do wish that I got buttons for the heated seats, but you already heard me complain about that. Then moving way down in the center, we do have a USB input as well as a 12-volt outlet and a cubby, which is so hard to reach from the driver's seat. Kind of an unnecessary cubby, but that's okay. And then we move into the center console. The center console, again, is very, very interesting in the way that it's designed. Up at the top, we do have cup holders, so we will do a big friggin' bottle test here in the Hyundai Ioniq 5. But as you saw, I tested one at the auto show. The same story here. It unfortunately fails the big friggin' bottle test. But then we have 2 USB chargers, we have a wireless charger, and then a giant cubby space down below, which is really, really interesting. I don't know what they figured you could put here, larger items for sure. But then up above that, we do have an openable armrest for more storage space, but you could fold it all the way up, and it almost feels like the old Ford Tauruses where you could fold up the center console and then there was a bench seat in the front. However, this just doesn't have the bench seat. Kind of an interesting design here, but I like that Hyundai's pushing it. Then we gotta talk about the seats. Like I said, they are heated, ventilated, power, and memory. Pretty much anything I can ask for from Hyundai right now, I am getting in this seat. It's been comfortable, like I said, on the long highway journeys that I've taken this car on. It's been a very pleasurable experience, and the seat really plays into that. However, speaking of seats, we do have a second row of seating, so let's go do a back seat review. All right, so we're in the back of the 2023 Hyundai Ioniq 5, and plenty of space back here. Head is not hitting the ceiling, knees are not hitting the seat in front of me. This is my driving position. I'm 5'11" and not a small guy. I do get 2 USB chargers down here, although they are USB-A. Everything in this car is USB-A, which I would have liked to seen some USB-C chargers, but it's grasping at straws at that point. I do have a vent in the door. I do have these shades that you can put up, which is really, really nice. I get a center console with 2 more cup holders, equally tiny. And then I get to enjoy this giant moonroof. Now, this does not open. There is no opening part. However, it is one continuous piece of glass from the front to the rear. And when you close it, it closes from either side and meets in the middle, which is a very, very interesting closing technique. Something I haven't really seen. Other than that, the space back here is really good, and the mood lighting carries on back here, which is really, really nice to see. A lot of manufacturers kind of forget about the back seats. Not Hyundai. Not Hyundai. It seems as though I have missed that there is actually also a wall outlet below the second row of seats. I did not see that on my initial review of the back seats. It's kind of cool. Let's hop around the very back. We'll take a quick look at the trunk. There's a tiny little frunk we'll talk about, and then we'll talk about the looks. All right, so on the back of the Ioniq 5, come down here. There's a little button, and it will pop up like that. Couple of things to note. First of all, we do have this giant privacy cover, which I really like. We can lift this up, and that is where the charger's held and other little things. And then it appears we have something over here. We can reach the other side of the charge port, I assume for maintenance. So kind of cool to see there. I do get a 12-volt outlet back here as well. I love to see that in this size of vehicle. And this is a power tailgate, which is really, really nice to see. However, walking around the front of the vehicle, I already popped it from inside. I do get a tiny little frunk. So it works like a normal hood. There's a hood latch so the wind doesn't take it. But much like the EV6, I do get a little cubby up front. You could put, whatever little trinkets you want in here. Not a whole lot of space, but kind of cool that they included that in the Ioniq 5. Now we got to talk about the looks. And here's the thing. I don't know. This car looks amazing. It is one of my favorite new cars ever because I love how retro this car looks. The big rectangular headlights and taillights, the hard, sharp lines, the mesh looking wheels. I mean, these wheels look like they're modified from an 80s Firebird. I love it. I love it, love it, love it. This car looks amazing. And so I actually paid a man in South America to make that synthwave song just for this review. That's not a song that exists. I had it made for this video that you just saw. That's how much I love this exterior. And at night, oh my God. I mean, what are we doing? It's the best. It's the coolest. There is nothing else. With that being said, let's get on to my final thoughts. What do I think driving the Hyundai Ioniq 5, something I've been fiending over since this car was announced? Well, there's good and bad things. Let's talk about the downsides. I'm not the biggest fan of owning an electric car at the moment because I don't have a home charger. If I had a home charger, life would be so much different and way better with this experience. I also don't really like the fact that I can't fully see the gauge cluster through the hoop in the steering wheel. I'm not in love with the shifter, but I can get past all of that because of not only how this car looks, but how this car has made me feel. Driving this Ioniq 5 around has been wonderful. And when I first received this car, I took it out during the day and I thought it was fine. It's another electric car. But then the sun went down and I turned the interior lights purple and I put on my favorite synthwave playlist. And for the first time in an electric car, I felt something. I felt joy. I felt like this car had a personality. Electric cars are appliances. They're answers to an issue with transportation. I felt similarly about electric cars as I would a toaster, a microwave, my phone. I love my phone. I'm always on my phone. It's necessary for my business and my personal life. But I never named my phone. When I upgrade, I don't feel bad. I just put it in a drawer and turn on the new phone. This has made me feel like the car has a soul, like it has a purpose, like it has a relationship with me. And this car, although it is brand new, feels like an 80s car. The regenerative brake paddles around the back of the steering wheel have these hard bumps. To a blind person, they'd be Harry Potter novels. I like that feeling. I like that harsh around the edges. This car talks to you. When you plug it in, it says charging has started, much like the Nissan 300ZX from 1984.
Charging started.
Lights are on.
Charging started.
Lights are on.
Charging started.
Lights are on.
think it might even be the same lady. And then we gotta talk about the looks again. It has hard edges. It has squared off headlights, which were government mandated in the 1970s and 80s. So a law that has been out of practice for over 40 years had an effect on this car, this style. And I love that. Driving this car almost makes me wonder, what would have happened if the oil crisis didn't end? If after 1973 we could never have another oil-powered vehicle? Well, this is probably what cars would have looked like in the 1980s. Imagine that. An electrified 1980s and 90s. All the awesome cars that we got, but with electric powertrains. How different and special that would have been. This car to me feels like revisionist history or just fantasy. What if? What would have happened? And I love that. The biggest takeaway from this Ioniq 5 has been that it has a personality. This doesn't feel like a microwave or toaster. This feels like a friend. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys enjoyed looking at the Ioniq 5. I put a lot of effort into that little exterior montage. I hope you enjoyed it. Huge thank you to everyone over at Drive Shop, Hyundai, of course, for loaning me the vehicle for the week, and the Midwestern Automotive Media Association. All fantastic people, and I can't wait to bring you guys more press cars. But for now, I'm just going to enjoy my last couple moments with the Hyundai Ioniq 5. Take care, guys.